The wind screamed across the broken fields of Varnifor. The air was thick with smoke and the bitter smell of burned metal. Once, this had been a proud world. Green valleys, silver cities, rivers that shone beneath two suns. Now it was only dust craters and silence. The last survivors of the coalition army hid in the ruins of an old communication tower, crouched beneath the flickering remains of a defense shield that barely held back the ash-filled wind. Commander Tarnik stared through the cracked visor of his helmet, watching the horizon where the Kreth army moved like a black tide. The enemy ships hung in the sky, sharp and cruel, like knives reflecting the dying light. He could hear their engines even from miles away, a low, endless hum that crawled beneath the skin. The Kreth were patient hunters. They never rushed. They advanced like a storm that knew it could not be stopped. Beside him, Sarai knelt by a wounded soldier, wrapping a blood-stained bandage around a scaled arm. Her hands trembled, not from fear but from exhaustion. She had not slept in 3 days. "He won't make it through the night," she whispered, her voice breaking. Tarnik said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Every message they had sent into the void, every call for help, had vanished into silence. Their allies were gone, their fleet destroyed, their people scattered. For weeks now, they had survived only on hope, and even that was running out. Outside, lightning flashed in the heavy clouds. It wasn't real lightning, it was plasma fire from the Kreth siege lines. Each flash marked the death of another bunker, another squad, another last stand. The ground shook again and dust fell from the ceiling of the tower. "Sir," said one of the scouts, his eyes wide and hollow. "They've broken through the southern perimeter. We can't hold them anymore." Tarnik nodded slowly. "Then we fall back to the tower base. Hold the high ground as long as we can." The scout hesitated. "And when they surround us?" Tarnik met his gaze. "Then we make it cost them." The young soldier swallowed hard and ran off to warn the others. As night fell, the ruins came alive with the red glow of Kreth targeting lasers. Sarai sat near the broken window, her hands covered in blood that wasn't her own. "They're toying with us," she said softly. "They could finish us any time they want." Tarnik didn't look at her. He was staring at the sky again. "They want us to break first. They want us to lose hope." "Hope?" she whispered bitterly. "Hope died weeks ago." He turned to her then, his face lined with dirt and old scars. "Not yet. As long as we breathe, it isn't dead." Outside, the Kreth speakers began to crackle. A deep, cold voice echoed through the valley in their language, translated by every communicator at once. "Surrender," it said. "No one is coming for you. Your worlds have abandoned you. The galaxy has forgotten your names." The soldiers looked at one another, some shaking, some closing their eyes. Sarai clenched her fists. "They're right," she said. "No one answers. No one cares." Tarnik stared at the communicator on his wrist, the one that had been silent for months. "Maybe," he said, "but I'll die with my blade in hand, not crawling." The Kreth attack came before dawn. The first explosions hit the outer walls. Plasma fire tore through the rubble, burning holes in the ground. The defense shield collapsed with a final flicker, and the night filled with light. The refugees and soldiers fired back, their weapons weak, their ammo almost gone. For every Kreth they killed, 10 more appeared, dark shapes moving through the smoke. Tarnik shouted orders, rallying what was left of his squad. Sarai dragged the wounded into a corner, shielding them with her body as debris fell around them. The screams were everywhere. It was chaos, loud and endless. Then the Kreth war machines appeared, towering metal beasts with glowing red eyes. Each step they took shook the ground. A blast hit the tower base, and the top half of the building came crashing down. Dust and fire filled the air. Tarnik stumbled to his feet, coughing. Through the haze, he saw the Kreth soldiers advancing, their armor gleaming, their blades humming with dark energy. They were close, too close. "This is it," he muttered. "This is where it ends." He lifted his rifle, the barrel glowing hot, and fired again and again until the weapon clicked empty. The Kreth kept coming. One raised its blade high above him, and then the sky screamed. At first it sounded like thunder, but deeper, heavier. The ground shook as if the planet itself had awakened. Everyone, Kreth and Coalition alike, looked up. Through the clouds, Streaks of white fire tore across the heavens. Bright lines of light moved faster than anything they had ever seen, breaking through the storm. Sarai gasped. "What is that?" No one answered. The Kreth paused, confused. Then the first of the falling lights hit the battlefield. The explosion was blinding. The shockwave flattened the Kreth front line in an instant, sending metal and bodies flying. A second and a third followed, each louder than the last. Something massive broke through the clouds, a ship, sleek and silver, with blue light pulsing along its sides. It was unlike any Kreth design. It didn't match any coalition vessel either. Its engines glowed like suns, and as it descended, smaller crafts spread out from beneath its hull, darting through the sky like wasps. Tarnik stumbled forward, staring. "It's not Kreth. It's not ours." A new voice came over their broken comms, calm, firm, human. The words carried in every frequency at once. "This is Task Force Valkyrie," the voice said. "We received your distress signal. Hold your position. Humanity is inbound," the soldiers froze. Humanity? The word was almost myth, a species rumored to exist on the far edge of the spiral arm, primitive, isolated, silent for centuries. They were said to have no empire, no fleet, only one small blue world. No one had ever seen them in battle. Until now. The Kreth opened fire on the descending ships, filling the sky with plasma bolts. The human vessels moved like predators, fast, controlled, precise. Each shot they fired hit its target, tearing apart Kreth fighters in a storm of light. Tarnik felt the shock wave as human drop pods slammed into the ground nearby. The doors burst open, and soldiers stepped out in dark armor, their visors glowing faint blue. They moved in tight formation, weapons humming with power. There was no shouting, no panic. "Only focus," the Kreth charged. The humans met them head-on. Bolts of light flashed across the field. Human rifles fired bursts that cut through armor like paper. The sound was like rolling thunder echoing through the ruins. The Kreth fell back, screaming in fury and confusion. Sarai ducked behind a wall as a human soldier passed her, tossing a grenade that vaporized 3 Kreth in a burst of white flame. She stared at him, stunned.
Who are you people?"
The soldier didn't answer. He just nodded once and moved forward, his voice calm over the comms. "Sector clear. Proceeding to extraction point." Above, the great human ship hovered low, casting a long shadow over the burning battlefield. From its underside, beams of blue light swept the ground, pulling wounded soldiers to safety. Tarnik stood in the open, watching it all. For the first time in months, he felt something strange, something dangerous. Hope. He tapped his communicator, voice trembling. "To the human commander."
"Whoever you are."
"This is Commander Tarnik of the Varnis Defense Coalition. You have our thanks," a woman's voice replied, steady and clear through the static. "Acknowledged, Commander. I'm Rhea Solis, Task Force Valkyrie. We got your message." Tarnik's throat went dry. "We sent that message over 80 days ago. We thought no one heard." Rhea's voice carried a trace of steel. "We heard it. Just took us some time to get here." The line went quiet for a moment. Then she added, "Now let's finish this." In the distance, the Kreth regrouped for another assault, their war machines forming up again. But now the sky belonged to someone else. Human fighters roared overhead, their engines leaving trails of thunder. For every Kreth ship that rose, 3 fell in burning pieces. Sarai knelt beside Tarnik, her face lit by the glow of explosions. "They're winning," she whispered. He nodded slowly, unable to look away. "No," he said softly. "They're reminding the galaxy what thunder sounds like." The night burned bright as the battle raged on. The Kreth, who had once seemed unstoppable, now stumbled under the weight of sudden fear. Every blast from the human ships struck with precision and fury. Every soldier who fought beside Tarnik could feel the tide turning, and through it all the storm above them rumbled on, deep, powerful, alive. The sound of humanity, arriving like the wrath of gods. When dawn came, the smoke began to clear. The ruins still smoldered, but the Kreth were retreating, chased by flashes of light that tore through the clouds. The survivors of Varnis 4 stood together, silent, watching the human fleet hang in the sky. They had thought help would never come. They had thought the stars were empty, but humanity had come, fast, fierce, and unstoppable, like thunder. Unstoppable, like thunder. The smoke had not yet cleared when the human boots touched the ground. Their armor shimmered with faint blue light, scratched and darkened by countless battles, yet precise and clean in every movement. They moved like a single living thing, each soldier covering the other, each step deliberate. The ground under them still smoked from the drop pod's impact, glowing faintly red. Commander Rhea Solis led them forward. Her helmet visor reflected the shattered city ahead, her voice crisp through the comms. "Secure the perimeter. Sweep for survivors. Watch your fields. Kreth units are still active." The human squad spread out wordlessly, scanning the area. They were taller than most of the aliens watching them, built strong and steady, their weapons humming with the same low rhythm as thunder rolling across the plains. Tarnik watched from behind a broken wall, weapon lowered but still trembling in his hands. Around him, the few remaining coalition fighters stared in disbelief. The humans had come through the fire like ghosts. They did not yell, they did not panic, they did not hesitate. A Kreth drone emerged from the smoke, metal claws cutting through the rubble, red eyes glowing. Before Tarnik could shout a warning, a single blue bolt from a human rifle pierced the drone's head. It fell instantly, smoking. The human who fired didn't even slow down. Sarai stepped closer to Tarnik. "They're incredible," she whispered. He nodded but said nothing. Part of him was still afraid to believe. One of the human soldiers turned toward them. His armor bore a white stripe down one arm and a symbol of a winged blue planet on his shoulder. He paused, scanning them briefly before lowering his weapon. "Coalition survivors?" he asked. His voice was filtered but steady, almost calm. Tarnik stepped out carefully. "Yes, Commander Tarnik of the Varnis Defense Force. And you?" The human soldier gave a short nod. "Sergeant Mendez, United Terran Navy. Commander Solis wants to speak with you." Before Tarnik could respond, a tall figure approached. Rhea Solis removed her helmet, revealing short black hair damp with sweat and sharp brown eyes that missed nothing. Her expression was hard but not cruel. "Commander Tarnik," she said, her tone even. "I'm sorry we're late. Your message reached us 2 months ago. We had to cross 3 sectors and break 2 blockades to get here." Tarnik blinked. "You crossed Kreth lines?" Her mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. "We crossed worse." She looked around the ruined outpost, taking in the burned walls and broken shields. "You've held out longer than anyone had the right to." "That matters." Sarai stepped forward, her voice shaking with emotion. "We thought we were forgotten." Rhea looked at her. "No one gets forgotten, not on our watch." Overhead, the great human warship, identified now as Resolute, moved silently through the clouds, its cannons still glowing from recent fire. Dropships continued to descend, bringing more soldiers, medics, and machines. Within minutes, the humans had built a field perimeter, erecting barriers and scanning for Kreth energy signatures. To Tarnik's people, it was like watching a miracle unfold. The humans worked with quiet purpose, as if this hellish place was only another day at war. Rhea knelt beside one of the wounded coalition fighters, checking his pulse. "We'll stabilize your people," she said. "But we can't stay in one place for long. Kreth reinforcements will regroup fast. We'll need to move to higher ground." Tarnik frowned. "You just got here." "You should do exactly what we came for," she finished. "We didn't cross half the sector to play defense. We're taking this world back." Her confidence struck Tarnik like a physical blow. He had not heard words like that in months, not since before everything had fallen apart. He found himself nodding before his mind could argue. As they spoke, thunder cracked again in the distance. Human artillery opened fire from hidden positions beyond the horizon, the shells screaming down in arcs of blue light. Each impact sent fire blooming across Kreth lines, scattering their formations. From the command relay of the Resolute, Captain Lang's voice came through the comms. "Admiral Rhea, enemy reinforcements inbound from orbit. They're deploying 3 cruisers and a swarm of drones." "Understood," she replied, rising. "Ready our interceptors. No one touches atmosphere without my say." Above them, the sky came alive again. Human fighter craft streaked out from the clouds, silver wings slicing through the smoke. They moved with eerie precision, weaving through enemy fire as if they could see the future. Plasma bolts flashed past them, but the human ships twisted, rolled, and returned fire with terrifying speed. Kreth drones exploded mid-air, raining molten debris over the battlefield. The refugees watched with wide eyes. Sarai whispered, "They fight like they've done this forever." "They haven't," Tarnik said quietly. "They're new to the stars, but not to war." He was right. Humanity had learned war the hard way, on their own world, before they had ever touched the stars. And when they finally reached the galaxy, they brought with them a discipline and ferocity born of endless struggle. Hours passed as humans pushed the Kreth back. Entire sectors of the city were reclaimed, their once-dead streets alive again with motion and purpose. Human medics worked side by side with coalition survivors, patching wounds, sharing food, offering quiet reassurance. At one point, Sarai found herself near the human supply line helping distribute water packs. A young soldier offered her a canister and smiled faintly. "You're safe now," he said. She hesitated. "I didn't think we would ever be." He nodded once, as if he understood too well. "Neither did we. But that's the thing about humans, ma'am. We don't know how to stay away from a good fight." Night fell again, and for the first time in many weeks, the stars were visible. The fires of battle still burned, but the constant red glare of Kreth artillery had faded. The humans had established control of the surrounding zones. The air was quieter, though not peaceful. Tarnik stood beside Rhea on the ruined balcony of what had once been the city's central tower. Below them, lights flickered as survivors gathered near the makeshift human camp. "You brought order to chaos in one day," he said. Rhea didn't look at him. "No, we brought a chance. The rest is up to you," he frowned. "You mean to leave?" "Not yet," she said. "But this is your world. We don't conquer. We answer distress calls. We strike hard, free the trapped, then move on." Tarnik studied her profile in the dim light. "You fight like an empire, but you speak like wanderers." Rhea's lips tightened slightly. "Empires forget compassion. Wanderers can't afford to." Before he could respond, a loud crash echoed from beyond the hills. A Kreth transport, badly damaged but still burning, had crashed nearby. Human scouts moved instantly, weapons raised. Rhea motioned for Tarnik to follow. They approached the wreck. From within, a wounded Kreth officer crawled out, armor torn, bleeding black ichor. He looked up at Rhea, his voice a rasp. You shouldn't be here." "The Dominion will come. They will burn your worlds." Rhea crouched down beside him, her eyes cold and sharp. "Let them try," she said softly. "We've seen fire before," the Kreth sneered weakly. "You humans, you fight like you believe you're invincible." She stood, staring into the burning wreck. "No," she said. "We fight because we know we aren't." The Kreth's eyes dimmed as life left him. Rhea turned away, her soldiers already securing the site. Later, as the night deepened, the survivors huddled together, listening to distant thunder from the continuing battles far away. Children who had not spoken in days now whispered in awe about the humans. Some called them angels, others called them ghosts, but the name that spread fastest among the camps was different: Thunderborn. Sarai sat near the fire, cleaning her hands. She looked up as Tarnik approached. "Do you think they'll really stay until the end?" He watched the human patrols moving in the dark, the blue lights of their visors flickering like tiny stars. "I think they'll stay until they're sure we can stand again. And then they'll go find someone else who can't." She nodded slowly. "They came from nowhere, just when we gave up." Tarnik looked up at the sky. The Resolute still hung there, silent and strong, its shadow stretching across the horizon. "That's the thing about thunder," he said. "You never know when it's coming until it's already overhead." Above them, the human fleet moved deeper into orbit, preparing for the next wave of the fight. And below, among the ashes of Varnis IV, hope began to grow again, faint but alive. Humanity had come, not as conquerors, but as a storm that refused to fade. The sun rose over Varnis IV like a wounded eye, its light weak and red, cutting through the drifting clouds of smoke that hung above the shattered world. The air still trembled with the echoes of yesterday's thunder, human weapons firing, Kreth war machines falling, the sound of freedom clawing its way out of ruin. But now the morning brought silence, a strange and uneasy kind of peace. Commander Rhea Solis stood on the edge of the human command post, her armor scorched from battle, her eyes scanning the distant horizon where Kreth banners still burned. The Resolute hovered high above, its massive shadow stretching across the plains, protective and constant. Around her, soldiers rebuilt fortifications and tended to the wounded. Some sat quietly, polishing their rifles, faces streaked with dirt and exhaustion, but not despair. Rhea's second-in-command, Lieutenant Garen Holt, approached carrying a data pad. "Reports from the outer sectors," he said. "Kreth forces are regrouping about 80 kilometers north. Looks like they're bringing in armor from orbit. And..." He hesitated. "Something bigger." Rhea looked up. "Define bigger." Holt tapped the pad, bringing up a holographic image. A massive Kreth fortress ship, part carrier, part living creature, loomed above the surface, tendrils of energy pulsing beneath its armor plates. "They're calling it the Devourer. It's moving slow but steady. Scans say it's coordinating all Kreth units planet-wide." Rhea's jaw tightened. "Then we cut the head off the beast." "Ma'am," Holt said carefully, "that thing's shielded. Heavy plasma armor, energy core bigger than anything we've seen. Our artillery won't even scratch it." Rhea stared at the image for a moment, then lowered her gaze to the broken land before her. "Then we stop aiming for what it can block," she said softly, "and start hitting what it can't." While the humans prepared, Tarnik and his surviving soldiers watched from a distance, unsure if what they were seeing was bravery or madness. The humans moved with such coordination, such quiet determination, that it almost frightened him. They didn't argue. They didn't hesitate. Every order was followed, every movement deliberate. Sarai walked among them, helping where she could. Human medics showed her how to use their strange field tools, devices that sealed wounds with light, injectors that stabilized hearts, drones that delivered supplies. For the first time in her life, she felt part of something greater than survival. She looked up as Rhea approached, hands on her hips, gaze fixed on the makeshift defense line. "You should be with your people, Doctor," Rhea said. Sarai smiled faintly. "They are my people. All of them now." Rhea's expression softened just slightly. "Good answer!" At that moment, the sky split open again. Kreth ships poured from the clouds, black and glinting, their weapons glowing like molten eyes. The ground rumbled as they descended, bringing death with them. The human alarms blared. Soldiers rushed to positions. Tarnik grabbed his rifle and joined them without hesitation. "Here they come," Holt shouted. "Then let's greet them," Rhea replied. The first volley came from orbit. Kreth bombardment cannons firing beams that turned the air white-hot. But the humans were ready. From the Resolute, counterfire launched in synchronized waves, a storm of blue energy that cut through the sky like lightning. In the chaos, Rhea stood at the command station, issuing calm orders. Alpha and Delta squads flanked their left. "Keep their mechs in crossfire. Epsilon, with me. Time to breach." Her voice never rose, never broke. Even as explosions shook the earth, she remained unshaken. Tarnik followed the humans into the fight, his weapon trembling in his hands, heart hammering. Around him, human marines moved like dancers in the middle of destruction, ducking, firing, advancing. They shouted commands in short bursts, their tone almost casual, as if chaos was their natural environment. One of them, a young soldier named Vickers, turned toward Tarnik as they reloaded behind cover. "First time fighting with humans?" he asked, grinning despite the blood on his cheek. Tarnik nodded, breathing hard. "You make it look easy," Vickers chuckled. "It's never easy. We just don't like showing fear." Then he was up again, firing another volley before Tarnik could respond. Across the battlefield, the Devourer loomed closer. It was enormous, an abomination of metal and flesh glowing with internal heat. Its energy core pulsed like a heart, and every pulse sent a ripple of light across the battlefield, boosting Kreth firepower and jamming communication. Holt cursed as his readings flickered. "We're blind, Commander." "The thing's jamming everything!" Then we fight without eyes, Rhea said. Signal Resolute, prepare for orbital strike pattern Theta 7. Ma'am, that'll level half the valley. I know. She turned, watching the horizon where the fortress crept forward. If we don't, there won't be a valley left to worry about. Up above, the Resolute's cannons glowed brighter, charging. The hum was so deep it could be felt in the bones. On the ground, the Kreth advanced, roaring through the smoke. Their war machines were monstrous, six-legged tanks that spat plasma bolts the size of small suns. Human lines bent but didn't break. Drones swarmed overhead, scanning targets, feeding data to the ships in orbit. Rhea sprinted across open ground, plasma fire raining down around her. She dived behind a broken vehicle, checked her weapon, and shouted to Holt through the comms. Mark their core! I don't need eyes, just coordinates. Holt gritted his teeth, watching the blurred readings on his scanner. Almost there, come on. Finally, the numbers locked. Target locked! Fire! Rhea commanded. The sky went white. The Resolute unleashed a barrage that shook the heavens. Beams of blue light tore through the clouds, slamming into the Devourer's shields. The first few strikes fizzled harmlessly, but then, on the fourth, the shield flickered. On the fifth, it cracked, and on the sixth, it shattered. The explosion was like a sunrise, bright, terrible, and endless. The Devourer screamed, its metallic voice echoing across the land as it began to collapse in on itself. Its tendrils writhed, its weapons sputtered, and then it fell, burning, a mountain of metal crashing into the ground. Cheers erupted across the battlefield. Tarnik dropped to his knees, overwhelmed by the sound, the roar of victory, of survival, of impossible triumph. But Rhea didn't cheer. She stood amid the smoke, watching the burning wreck. Don't celebrate yet, she said quietly. The Kreth don't die easy. Her words proved true within minutes. The ground beneath them trembled as something massive moved beneath the fallen fortress. A deep vibration, rhythmic and alive, pulsed through the dirt. The Devourer's remains shifted, and from the wreckage rose a new shape. A massive Kreth warform, taller than any human walker, its body glowing with the stolen energy of the destroyed ship. It roared, and the air itself seemed to twist around it. Rhea raised her weapon but knew it wouldn't matter. All units fall back, she ordered. We can't take that thing on the ground. As soldiers scrambled for cover, the Resolute moved lower in the sky, positioning for another strike. But before it could fire, the warform raised its arm and unleashed a beam of dark energy. The shot pierced the sky and struck the human ship squarely in the hull. The explosion lit the clouds. On the ground, every soldier froze. The mighty Resolute burned, its lights flickering, its engines failing. Pieces of metal rained down like fiery rain. Tarnik's chest tightened. No! Rhea stared upward, her voice breaking for the first time. Lang, get your people out of there, Lang! Static answered. For a long, terrible moment, there was only silence. Then the Resolute's voice came faintly over the comms. Admiral, it's been an honor. And then the sky turned to fire. The Resolute's final act was to drive itself straight into the Kreth warform, its core overloading. The impact shook the planet. A wave of white light swept across the horizon, erasing everything in its path. When it faded, the battlefield was silent. Tarnik looked around in awe. The Devourer was gone. The warform was gone. The Kreth army, gone. Only smoke and ash remained. Rhea sank to one knee, her hand gripping the dirt. For a moment, she looked less like a commander and more like a human being, grieving, exhausted, but alive. Sarai approached quietly, placing a hand on her shoulder. You did it, she said softly. You saved us. Rhea shook her head slowly. No, she whispered. They did. The Resolute did. She looked up at the sky, now empty except for drifting ash and faint lightning in the distance. And they'll remember, she added. Every world that hears this story will remember. Tarnik stood beside her, silent, his heart heavy with gratitude and sorrow. Humanity had come like thunder and left the same way. Loud, unstoppable, unforgettable, but the storm wasn't over. Somewhere in the dark between stars, the Kreth would rise again. And when they did, they would remember too. The day help finally came, and humanity struck like thunder. came, and humanity struck like thunder. The ash settled slowly over what was once the city of Varnis Prime. The world was quiet, almost sacred, as if afraid to disturb the ghosts left behind. Craters glowed faintly where plasma had scorched the earth. Pieces of the human warship Resolute lay scattered across miles of wasteland, half buried in glassed soil, still warm to the touch. The wind carried the scent of ozone and smoke, and beneath it, something new. Life. The Kreth were gone. For the first time in months, there was no hum of their engines, no scream of their weapons, only silence and the faint hum of rebuilding. Commander Rhea Solis stood at the edge of the crater that marked the final stand. Her armor was scarred, the blue glow of its systems dimmed from damage. She held her helmet under one arm, looking down at the wreckage where the Resolute had fallen. The sky above her was pale and wide, washed clean by the shockwave. Behind her, the camp buzzed with movement. Humans and aliens alike worked side by side, dragging wreckage, burying the dead, and salvaging what they could from the ruins. Tarnik approached quietly, his steps uneven on the shattered ground. He had cleaned his armor, though the cracks still showed. His people had begun rebuilding their shelters, setting up tents near the human camp. For the first time since the invasion, they walked without looking over their shoulders. "She was a fine ship," he said softly. Rhea nodded. "The finest I've ever served on." There was a long pause. The air between them was heavy with the things neither wanted to say. "You lost good people," Tarnik said finally. "So did you," Rhea replied. "That's what makes us the same." He looked at her, surprised. "We're not the same. You came from nowhere, crossed the stars to fight a war that wasn't yours." She turned her gaze to the horizon. "Maybe that's why we came." "Because it wasn't ours." Tarnik frowned, confused. "Why risk so much for strangers?" "Because no one ever came for us," Rhea said quietly. "When our world burned, we learned what silence felt like. We swore no one else would feel it again." The words lingered, heavy and real. As night fell, fires burned across the camp. Survivors gathered around them, telling stories in low voices. Human soldiers laughed quietly, trading rations with alien refugees. There was no barrier between them now. War had stripped away everything but the simple truth. They had survived together. Sarai moved among the wounded, helping human medics tend to both species alike. The medics taught her how to use their strange machines. One of them, a young woman named Vega, smiled as she handed Sarai a device. "Press this against the wound. It seals it with heat. Don't flinch when it sparks." Sarai tried it, startled when a hiss of light sealed a soldier's arm. "You could save a whole planet with this," she said, awed. Vega chuckled. "One day, maybe. Right now, we'll settle for saving one at a time." In the distance, thunder rolled softly, but it wasn't the Kreth this time. It was a storm, real, natural thunder echoing across the plains. For the first time in months, rain began to fall. At first, no one moved. Then laughter spread through the camp. Soldiers lifted their faces to the sky, letting the water wash away the dust and blood. Even Rhea closed her eyes for a moment, her expression softening. Tarnik stood in the rain, watching his people smile for the first time in what felt like forever. "It's like the world remembers how to live again," he said. Rhea nodded. "Storms wash away the old. They make room for what comes next." Later that night, a meeting was called inside the largest tent. Human officers, coalition leaders, and surviving scientists gathered around a makeshift table made from scraps of whole metal. The map before them showed the surrounding systems. Red marks where Kreth still held power, green where resistance forces had risen. Rhea stood at the head of the table. "The Dominion isn't finished," she began. "What we did here hurt them, but it didn't break them. They'll regroup, and when they do, they'll strike harder." A murmur ran through the group. One of the alien commanders spoke. "Then what hope do we have? Even with your strength, we can't fight them forever." Rhea placed her hand flat on the table. "You don't fight forever. You fight until they realize fear, until they remember what it feels like to bleed." Tarnik leaned forward. "You think they can feel fear?" "They will," she said simply. For a long time, no one spoke. Then Sarai, who had been standing near the entrance, said softly, "They already do." Everyone turned to her. "I saw it," she continued, "during the battle, when the human ships came down through the storm. The Kreth didn't just retreat, they ran. They've ruled this part of space for centuries, and they ran." Rhea looked around the table. "Then we make sure they keep running." Plans formed through the night, defensive grids, relay stations, evacuation routes. The humans offered to train the coalition in their tactics. They shared blueprints for weapons and armor, but also for food production, communications, and medicine. They didn't teach domination. They taught resilience. By morning, a new flag flew beside the human banner, a simple symbol showing a circle of stars surrounding a single blue world. It was not the mark of conquest. It was the mark of promise. In the following days, human engineers worked tirelessly to stabilize the planet's orbit defenses. Drones buzzed across the sky, rebuilding communication towers. When the first signal went out, a clean, strong message across the void, it carried Rhea's voice. "This is Admiral Rhea Solis of Task Force Valkyrie. Varnis 4 stands free. To any who can hear me, humanity answers. You are not alone." Across distant colonies and scattered outposts, that message was heard. Some dismissed it as propaganda, others wept. And in the dark places of the galaxy, where the Kreth's shadow still stretched, the enslaved whispered it like a prayer. Tarnik's people began rebuilding their cities with human help. Children followed the Marines around, imitating their walk, their stance, their salute. The soldiers pretended not to notice, though some left trinkets behind, insignia badges, spent cartridges, even a few ration bars, always wrapped neatly in cloth. Sarai spent most of her time in the new medical bay, learning from the humans. She had grown close to Vega, who teased her often. "Careful," Vega said one evening as they shared a ration pack. "Spend too long around us and you might start thinking like one of us." Sarai smiled. "And what is that like?" "Loud," Vega said with a grin. "Stubborn. Always running toward the fight instead of away from it." "Maybe that's not such a bad thing," Sarai said. But not everything was peace. One night, alarms blared across the camp. Rhea and Tarnik rushed outside to see the sky flashing again. Red lights from above. A damaged Kreth frigate had emerged from orbit, limping and furious. It was trying to crash itself into the surface, a final act of vengeance. "Target it before it hits atmosphere," Holt shouted from the command center. "Too late," Rhea said. "It's falling fast." Without hesitation, she climbed into a dropship, shouting over the noise. "Load all anti-armor torpedoes. We intercept manually." Tarnik grabbed her arm. "You can't be serious. You'll never survive the heat re-entry." Rhea met his eyes. "We survived worse." Before he could stop her, the dropship launched. It screamed upward, slicing through the night toward the falling Kreth vessel. The impact lit the sky and blew fire. For a terrifying moment, no one spoke. Then the debris burned up harmlessly in the upper atmosphere. Minutes later, the dropship limped back down, smoking but intact. Rhea emerged from the hatch, her armor blackened. "Next time," she said dryly, "I want a day off." Cheers erupted through the camp. Even Tarnik laughed, shaking his head. "You humans are insane." "Maybe," she said, smiling faintly. "But we get things done." In the days that followed, the storm clouds cleared completely. The sun shone on Varnis 4 again, bright and warm. Plants began to grow through the cracks in the rubble. The survivors built their homes on the ruins, not to forget, but to remember. Every night, as the new city lights flickered to life, Tarnik would look up at the stars, wondering how far the humans would go next. They had come like thunder, saved a dying world, and changed the course of history. And somewhere deep in the stars, he knew the Kreth were still listening. Somewhere out there, another world was calling for help. And when that call came, he was certain of one thing: humanity would hear it. And when they arrived, the galaxy would once again remember what thunder sounded like. The peace on Varnis 4 did not last. It never does, not after war leaves its mark. Scars may fade, but they never vanish completely. And in the quiet, the survivors could still feel the distant heartbeat of the Kreth Dominion pulsing through the stars. The humans had given the coalition new courage. New hope. But they had also painted a target so bright that even the darkest corners of the galaxy turned to stare. Commander Rhea Solis stood at the edge of the reconstructed defense line. Her armor repaired, her gaze distant. The horizon glowed orange with dawn, but she wasn't looking at the sunrise. Her eyes tracked the faint shimmer above the upper atmosphere, the distortion that meant ships were moving in orbit. Too far to see, but close enough to fear. "Scouts report activity in Sector 9, Lieutenant Holt said, stepping up beside her. "Energy signatures match Kreth engines. Big ones." Rhea didn't look at him. "How long?" "Hours, maybe less," he replied. "They're coming back." She exhaled slowly, her breath misting in the cold morning air. "Then it's time to remind them why they left." Below the ridge, Tarnik's people were finishing their new defenses. The once ruined city had begun to rebuild itself, its cracked streets now lined with makeshift walls of steel and stone. New banners fluttered alongside human ones, the blue planet and the ring of stars together. But when the warning sirens howled, everyone stopped what they were doing and looked up. The Kreth had returned, and this time they were not a raiding party. They were an army. Dark shapes burst through the clouds like falling knives. The ground shook as massive transports screamed toward the surface, dropping war machines larger than houses. The air filled with the shriek of engines and the echo of the old fear the Kreth always carried with them. Tarnik rushed to the human command post, his face grim. "They're not here to conquer," he said. "They're here to erase." Rhea met his gaze. "Then we won't give them anything left to erase." The humans moved with the same impossible precision as before, but this time, the coalition fighters joined them in full strength. Alien engineers manned artillery posts built from salvaged human tech, their cannons glowing blue as they charged. Medics took up positions behind reinforced walls. Children were hidden in the underground bunkers that once held ammunition. Everyone knew the drill now. Sarai was there too, her hands stained with grease from fixing power couplings. She wasn't a medic anymore, not really. She was something else now. Half healer, half engineer, one of the first of her people to wear the patch of a human squad. The blue planet insignia rested on her shoulder like a promise. When the Kreth ships opened fire, the night lit up as if the sky itself was burning. The human artillery responded immediately. Each round screamed upward, leaving trails of thunder that split the air apart. The first wave of Kreth fighters never made it to the ground. They burst into flames mid-descent. The second wave fared better, landing on the outskirts of the city and unleashing troops in black armor that swarmed forward like insects. "Hold the line," Rhea ordered, her voice calm over the comms. "Every meter we give, we take back twice." The battlefield erupted in chaos. Plasma bolts cut through the air, shaking the ruins. Human Marines fought shoulder to shoulder with coalition soldiers, their movements synchronized from weeks of training. Where the Kreth advanced, the humans countered, each shot measured, each retreat deliberate. From above, the replacement human ship, the Indomitable, arrived in orbit, its sleek hull gleaming. It wasn't as large as the Resolute, but its crew carried the same fire. Captain Vega, promoted after the last battle, coordinated the strikes from orbit. "We see their forward command ship," she reported. "Looks like they've brought something new. Adaptive shielding. Our rounds aren't breaking through." Rhea frowned. "Then stop shooting at the shields. Target the ground anchors. Cut its legs out." The Indomitable's cannons rotated, firing in rhythmic bursts. Explosions rippled through the Kreth formation as their massive command walker stumbled, its engines flaring. Tarnik led a squad on the ground, weaving through collapsed buildings, firing from cover. His people followed the humans' tactics now, short bursts, constant motion. He ducked behind a wall, breathing hard. "They just keep coming," he muttered. Beside him, Sergeant Mendez grinned under his helmet. "Good. Means we don't have to chase them." He vaulted the wall and fired a grenade that exploded in a burst of blue light, vaporizing 3 Kreth soldiers at once. Tarnik followed, shouting orders in his native tongue. For the first time, the human word for attack, "push," echoed in alien voices across the field. Hours bled into chaos. The ground became mud mixed with metal and blood. The city shook with every impact. Still, no one broke. Rhea was everywhere. Her voice over the comms, her rifle steady, her orders clear. When a Kreth tank punched through the line, she led the counter-strike herself, climbing its hull and dropping a charge into its vent. The explosion threw her backward, but she landed on her feet. The soldiers cheered. From orbit, Captain Vega's voice came again, strained. "Admiral, more Kreth cruisers incoming." 4, no, 5. "We're outnumbered 10-1. Rhea stared up at the burning sky. "Then we even the odds." "Initiate hammerfall." "Ma'am, that's orbital saturation." "We'll lose half the city." "I'd rather rebuild it than bury it." The order went through. A moment later, the heavens opened. The Indomitable unleashed a storm of kinetic bombardment, streaks of light raining down like divine fire. Each impact shook the world, throwing dust and flame into the air. The Kreth ranks disintegrated under the onslaught. In the middle of the chaos, Tarnik found himself laughing, a strange, wild sound that startled even him. For years, the Kreth had been untouchable, inevitable. Now they were the ones running, breaking ranks under the relentless storm. Then, through the smoke, the Kreth commander appeared, a towering figure in black armor, eyes glowing with cold fury. He raised a blade crackling with dark energy and pointed it toward Rhea. "Human," he hissed, his voice booming through the translators. "You bring chaos to order. You will be erased." Rhea stepped forward, rifle slung, sidearm ready. "You tried that already," she said. "Didn't work," the Kreth charged. The ground shook with every step. Rhea stood her ground, firing shot after shot until the weapon overheated. Then she drew her combat knife, meeting the creature head-on. Sparks flew as metal clashed against metal. The fight was brutal, fast, and close. The Kreth struck like a hammer, each blow strong enough to shatter armor. Rhea dodged, countered, rolled beneath its swing, driving her blade between its plates. It howled, spinning, claws tearing through her shoulder plate. Blood streaked down her arm. She gritted her teeth, eyes burning with fury. "You should have stayed in the dark," she said, and drove her blade up under its jaw. The Kreth convulsed, then collapsed, its body twitching before going still. When the dust cleared, silence returned. The remaining Kreth forces broke and fled, their ships screaming back into the clouds. The battlefield was theirs. Again. Rhea stood over the fallen commander, breathing hard. Tarnik approached, awe in his eyes. "You killed their general." She shook her head. "No, humanity did. All of us." As the survivors gathered, the sun began to rise again, its light glinting off the wreckage. It was a broken dawn, but it was theirs. In orbit, Vega's voice came through again, calm now. "They're retreating, Admiral." "We did it!" Rhea stared up at the sky, her expression unreadable. "No," she said softly. "We reminded them." The humans and coalition forces stood together among the ruins, the smell of smoke and rain mingling in the air. The storm had passed, for now, but in the silence that followed, everyone felt it, the truth that this was not the end. The Kreth would come again, stronger, angrier, and when they did, humanity would be waiting. They would not whisper, they would not hide, they would strike like thunder, would not hide, they would strike like thunder. The victory at Varnis IV spread through the galaxy like wildfire. In the dark corners of forgotten colonies, enslaved species whispered the name humanity as though it were a spell. In the strongholds of the Kreth Dominion, high commanders studied the battle logs in silence, watching the recordings again and again, the blue flashes, the thunder, the impossible defiance of a race that had come from nowhere and struck down a warlord with their bare hands. But for those who had fought on the ground, the echoes of victory carried a heavier weight. The air still smelled of ash and blood. The ruins still burned in places. The cries of the wounded haunted the nights. And every dawn, when the sun rose over the wreckage, the survivors remembered the faces of those who had not lived to see it. Rhea Solis watched the sun rise from the balcony of the rebuilt command post, her arm in a sling, her armor freshly repaired. Below her, engineers and soldiers, human and alien, worked side by side to fortify the city. Her mind was already far beyond the walls, tracing battle lines across the stars. The Kreth would not forget. Neither would she. Captain Vega's voice came through her comms, soft but urgent. "Admiral, long-range scans picked up something unusual." "Not Kreth this time, something else." Rhea turned. "Define something else." "Energy readings on the far edge of the system. High warp distortions, but not Kreth signatures. Smaller, faster, I think we're being watched. Rhea frowned. Get me visuals. Seconds later, the holographic display lit up with grainy images, faint metallic shapes drifting at the edge of the solar system, observing, not approaching. Spies? Holt asked from behind her. Observers, Rhea said quietly. Every empire out there wants to know who we are now. What we can do. Tarnik joined them, still wearing his soldier's coat, its fabric patched with human insignia. And what will you do when they come asking questions? Rhea smiled faintly. Give them answers they won't forget. For the next few weeks, the work continued. Humans built orbital stations above Varnus 4, repairing what little remained of the communication networks. Coalition leaders visited, bringing small gifts of thanks, medals, art, promises of alliance. Everywhere Rhea went, she was greeted as Thunderborn. The title embarrassed her, but she accepted it. Sometimes symbols mattered more than truth. Sarai had become one of the most respected figures in the new city. Her skills as a medic and her courage during the battles made her beloved among the refugees. Children followed her through the streets, and the soldiers who had once seen her as fragile now saluted her as one of their own. She wore her patch, the blue planet, like armor. But peace never lasts long on a frontier soaked in war. One night, alarms screamed again. The stars outside flickered with motion. Rhea rushed to the command center, her team already at their stations. What is it this time? She demanded. Vega's voice was tight with concern. Unidentified fleet approaching fast. 20 ships. No Kreth markings. Any hails? None. They're silent. Then they're not friends, Rhea said. The fleet came out of warp like ghosts, sleek ships painted matte black, their hulls absorbing light. They formed a perfect wedge formation and stopped just short of Varnus orbit. No weapons fired. No signals sent. Rhea stared at the display. Put me through. Her voice carried across open channels. This is Admiral Rhea Solis of Task Force Valkyrie. Identify yourselves. For a long moment, there was only static. Then a voice replied, smooth, calm, and distant. Humanity. The galaxy whispers your name. We have come to see if the stories are true. Who are you? Rhea asked. We are the Varkal Compact. You've upset the balance, Admiral. The Kreth were monsters, yes, but monsters we understood. Now they are wounded, and something new rises in their place. You. Rhea's eyes narrowed. We don't want your balance. We want peace? Peace built on thunder? The voice said. No. You're building an empire of fear. Before she could respond, the connection cut. Seconds later, warning lights flared across the board. They're charging weapons, Holt shouted. The Indomitable moved instantly, deploying interceptors. The first volley of plasma bolts streaked across space, slamming into the orbital stations. The shockwave rattled the planet's surface. Return fire, Rhea ordered. Full defensive pattern. The night sky turned into chaos once more. Blue trails cut across the clouds as human fighters rose to meet the enemy. The Varkal ships moved like serpents, twisting through the barrage. They weren't here to conquer. They were testing humanity's strength. Tarnik joined Rhea on the surface defenses, rallying his soldiers. You were right, he said grimly. You shook the galaxy. Then we'd better make sure it remembers the sound, Rhea replied. The battle raged in orbit. The Indomitable fired salvos with terrifying precision, each blast lighting the night. But the Varkal ships were fast, darting in and out of the attack range, hitting and vanishing. Vega's voice came through, breathless. They're not trying to win. They're recording us, mapping our tactics. Then stop giving them a clean map, Rhea said. Change everything, go dark. Use blind maneuvers. The Indomitable's engines flared, its systems dimming. For several minutes, it vanished completely from sensors. Then it reappeared behind the enemy formation, its guns blazing. 2 Varkal ships exploded instantly. The rest scattered, retreating into the void, but the victory felt hollow. Rhea stared at the empty sky long after the ships vanished. They'll tell others, she said. Every major power in the galaxy will be talking about us now. Tarnik crossed his arms. Then maybe they'll think twice before attacking another innocent world. She didn't answer. Deep down, she knew what was coming next. Fear spreads faster than faith. The same fear that had once kept the galaxy silent against the Kreth would now turn against humanity. In the following days, small delegations arrived from nearby systems, some seeking alliance, others warning her to leave before the Dominion returned. The humans accepted none of the threats, but they listened to every plea for help. For every world like Varnus, there were 10 still under Kreth control, crying out in secret. Rhea gathered her officers one last time inside the command tent.
We can't stay here,
she said. If we make Varnus our fortress, they'll burn it again. We take the fight to them, one system at a time. Vega frowned. We barely have the resources to hold one planet, let alone start a campaign. Then we make do, Rhea said. We always do. Tarnik stepped forward. If you leave, we come with you. My people owe you everything. You've taught us how to fight again. Rhea shook her head. You owe me nothing. You owe each other everything. Varnus needs you here. He hesitated, then gave a slow nod. Then when you return, we'll still be standing. That night, the Indomitable lifted off from Varnus 4. The people gathered to watch, their faces illuminated by the blue light of the engines. Children waved. Soldiers saluted. The thunder of departure rolled across the valleys like a promise. In orbit, Rhea looked down one last time. We came to save one world, she said quietly. Now the galaxy needs saving from itself. Vega smiled faintly. Then let's give them something to believe in. As the ship jumped to warp, the stars stretched into lines of light. Behind them, Varnus 4 glowed like a single ember in the dark, a spark that refused to die. In the far reaches of space, Kreth fleets gathered again. The Dominion was not broken, only enraged. Their new weapons pulsed with crimson energy. Their commanders swore oaths of vengeance. But among their prisoners, a rumor spread like fire that Thunder had a name, and it was coming for them. And somewhere, on a quiet planet where the sky was clear and the people still rebuilding whispered at night, a child asked, "Will the humans come again?" Sarai smiled and looked up at the stars. "Yes," she said softly. "And when they do, you'll hear them before you see them, because thunder always comes before the storm. Thunder always comes before the storm." The stars were burning again. Across the edge of known space, the Kreth Dominion's banners rose once more, black and crimson, devouring everything in their path. Their vengeance was not quiet this time. They didn't invade planets to enslave or control. They burned them clean, leaving nothing behind but glass and shadow. And through every occupied world, a single message echoed in a dozen languages. "Where are your humans now?" The galaxy trembled, but humanity did not answer. Not yet. Months passed. Rumors spread like sparks in dry wind. Some said the humans had fallen, their fleets destroyed beyond the rim. Others whispered that they were regrouping, building something vast in the dark between the stars. On Varnus 4, the survivors refused to believe they were gone. Each night, they looked to the heavens, waiting for thunder. Sarai worked tirelessly in the rebuilt city, which now thrived amid scars of war. Fields grew where craters once smoked. Children played near old battlements, their laughter carrying on the wind. But even here, beneath blue skies, the ache of absence lingered. She often stood atop the old tower, the one where Tarnik had once waited for death, and stared upward, remembering the sound that had split the heavens. "They'll come," she would whisper. "They always do." Tarnik had become the planet's leader now, though he hated the title. He spent his days balancing trade, defense, and reconstruction, but at night he still wore his old armor and walked the perimeter walls alone. His soldiers were veterans now, hardened by loss and forged by the example of the humans who had fought beside them. They called themselves Storm Guard, and every emblem bore a blue circle crossed by a bolt of white light. When the Kreth finally returned to Varnus, there was no panic this time. No despair. The people had learned to stand tall. It began at dawn. The horizon shimmered red, and the sky filled with the deep growl of engines. The first wave of transports cut through the clouds, black silhouettes blotting out the sun. Kreth landing craft slammed into the plains, deploying troops that marched with mechanical precision. The people of Varnus didn't run. They went to their stations. Tarnik stood at the command tower, his hand resting on the control panel that activated the city's new shield. "We hold," he said. His voice carried through every comm channel. "We've done it before. We'll do it again." The battle began before the last syllable left his mouth. Plasma rained down, striking the shields, turning the air white-hot. The ground shook under the impact. Soldiers fired from barricades, railguns humming. Sarai coordinated medical teams, her calm voice cutting through chaos. Still, the Kreth pressed closer. Their weapons were stronger now, their armor nearly impenetrable. Every blast of their cannons pushed the defenders back. The sky dimmed beneath their fleet. On the bridge of the lead Kreth warship, a commander watched the surface through burning crimson eyes. "This world should have been dust," he snarled. "How do they still fight?" "Because they learned from thunder," his aide said softly. The commander sneered. "Then let them learn silence." He raised his claw. "Fire the core disruptor." In orbit, energy began to gather, a sphere of red light that pulsed and expanded. It would consume the entire city in seconds. Tarnik looked up as the glow brightened. He knew there was no countermeasure strong enough to stop it. Then the sky screamed. It began as a low vibration, a hum that trembled through the air. The red light faltered. The clouds split apart, and from the void came a flash brighter than dawn. Ships emerged one by one, sleek and deadly, their hulls engraved with white lightning marks. At their head was a vessel unlike any other, a massive dreadnought with wings of glowing energy, engines roaring like a living storm. Its name burned across its hull in bright blue. Resolute's Echo. The human fleet had returned. The first volley from their cannons shattered the disruptor beam before it could strike. The shockwave rippled through the Kreth formation, sending their smaller ships tumbling. Then the dreadnought spoke, its voice transmitted across every open frequency in the system. "This is Task Force Valkyrie. Humanity stands with Varnis." The cheers that erupted across the planet drowned out even the thunder. Soldiers who had been seconds from despair laughed through their tears. Sarai dropped her medkit and stared skyward, whispering the words she had carried for months. They came back. Rhea Solis was alive. Her face appeared on every screen, older, harder, but unmistakably her. "You've held the line long enough," she said. "Now let's end this." From the dreadnought, waves of smaller ships poured forth. Fighters, bombers, and drop pods trailing blue fire. They hit the surface like falling stars. The Kreth formation broke apart under the assault. The thunder that followed shook mountains. Rhea's forces moved with terrifying coordination. Every target fell with precision. Coalition allies who had joined her fleet followed the human ships, their banners mixing with Earth's. The war wasn't just humanity's anymore. It belonged to every world that had once been silent. Tarnik led the ground defense with renewed fury. "Push forward!" he roared into the comms. "They're breaking!" Beside him, Sarai tended the wounded, her hands steady even as the sky burned. The battlefield was chaos and beauty all at once. Flashes of light, smoke, and the unending rhythm of artillery. On the Kreth command ship, panic spread. "It's not possible," the commander hissed. "We destroyed them. We destroyed their fleet." His aide shook his head. "You destroyed their ship, not their will." Before he could respond, the Resolute's Echo unleashed its main cannon. The beam pierced through the Kreth flagship, slicing it in half. The explosion was blinding, a sun blooming in the blackness of space. When the light faded, the Dominion fleet was in full retreat. One by one, their ships vanished into warp, leaving only wreckage behind. The sky grew quiet again. Rhea's voice came across the comms. "Varnis is secure. The Kreth are broken. Stand down!" On the ground, silence followed. Then the cheers began, soft at first, then louder until the entire city roared. Tarnik sank to his knees, exhausted but smiling. Sarai knelt beside him, tears streaking her soot-covered face. "They did it again," she said. He nodded. "No," he whispered. "We did." Hours later, Rhea landed among them. The crowd gathered as she stepped out of her shuttle, her uniform scorched, her eyes sharp as ever. Tarnik met her halfway, and for a moment they simply stared at each other. "You're late," he said. Rhea smiled faintly. "We were busy ending a war." She looked around at the rebuilt city, at the soldiers and medics standing shoulder to shoulder, human and alien alike. "You didn't just survive," she said. "You built something new." "That's what victory looks like." Sarai stepped forward.
Will you stay this time?
Rhea shook her head. "We can't. There are others out there still fighting, still waiting for help. We go where the silence is." Tarnik looked up at the sky. "And when the silence returns here?" Rhea's voice softened. "Then remember this sound." That night, as the fleet prepared to leave, the people of Varnis filled the hills and rooftops to watch. The ships lifted one by one, their engines humming like distant thunder. Children covered their ears, laughing at the rumble that shook the ground. Sarai stood beside Tarnik as the last of the ships rose into the clouds.
"They'll keep fighting,"
she said. He nodded. "So will we." When the final ship vanished into the stars, the sky seemed larger somehow, alive again. And though the thunder faded, its echo lingered, carried in the hearts of all who heard it. Years later, the galaxy would tell the story in countless ways. Some said the humans were warriors forged from storms. Others said they were guardians who answered cries across the stars. But among those who knew the truth, the words were simpler. When all seemed lost, when no one else came, humanity did. And when they struck like thunder. They struck like thunder.